Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Jersey Business and Industry Association's first ever Not-for-Profit Summit. If you're just joining us, please remember to change your view from gallery to speaker. And if you're not sure how, the team will put some direction in the chat. Many of you know me already. My name is Chrissy Buteas, and I serve as the Chief Government Affairs Officer at NJBIA, the largest statewide business association in the country, representing approximately 1 million jobs in the state. So before we get started, I need to thank the organizations without which this event could not happen. The event was produced in partnership with NJM Insurance Group, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, Investors Bank, PSEG, Stillwell Hanson, New Jersey Clean Energy Program, J&J, Grunin Foundation, Comcast, DCM Associates, Junior Achievement, Mercadian, Mercer Street Friends, New Jersey Resources, Northfield Bank, Insperity, Oxygen Benefits Consulting, Vistage, Food Bank of South Jersey, Fulfill, Society for Prevention of Teen Suicide, and Borden Perlman. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our fearless leaders, the nonprofit chair, Jody Grimwald of Zach G. Applaud Our Kids Foundation, and the not-for-profit leadership team of Alex Cole from the ARC of Cape May County, Dawn Dougherty from the Society for Prevention of Teen Suicide, Jocelyn Gilman from Northern New Jersey NFP Lead, Diana Zita from Hamilton Area YMCA, and Fred Wozniak of the Food Bank of South Jersey. So, and now without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this morning. Laura Berman Fortgang is internationally recognized as a pioneer in the personal coaching field and the founder and owner of Now What Coaching. She has worked extensively in the corporate arena as an executive coach in pharma, finance, food service and supply, and in government agencies such as NASA and the Army Corps of Engineers. She supports organizations and their people to forge new directions and weather change. As a professional speaker, Laura has traveled to many parts of the world to inspire excellence for individuals and companies. Her in-demand keynotes have been enjoyed at such companies as McDonald's, Prudential, Tricon, and the Clem Blanchard companies. Women's groups such as the Healthcare Women's Business Association, the Women's Food Service Forum, and Women's Leadership Initiatives for McDonald's Corporation, Eli Lilly, Novartis, have had her back year after year as a featured speaker. The best-selling author of 5 self-help books in 13 languages, Laura is also a frequent contributor to mainstream media like the Huffington Post, and has been seen on the Oprah Winfrey Show, the CBS Early Show, NBC's Today, and various nationally syndicated print and cable outlets. So, Laura, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
So Laura, I mean, challenging times for sure. So you had a ton of experience lately, and traveling the world, obviously pre-COVID and such. And I would love to hear a little bit about your passion and how you're getting through COVID to kick us off today.
Sure. Well, again, let me say hi to everyone. It's good to see you. And I might have met many of you as I made rounds as a candidate for assembly in 2019. But in my day job and my rest of my life, I've been coaching people for over 25 years to help them get through change, whether that be a career change or working with organizations to deal with the chaos, and changing their perspective, changing their technology, and changing how they do business in order to stay in their core mission. And look, I'll be honest, I mean, COVID for me began with a bang, like the rest of you. Everything stopped. I spent a lot of time on the couch. COVID-19 for me was 19 pounds. And then in June, I just was like, all right, that's it. I can't act like, every day is it time to have wine and when is it going to be over? It's not going to be over. So I made a huge pivot in my business, right? I don't have travel. I don't have speaking gigs on stage. Who knows what's going to happen. And I moved a lot of my business online, like many people have been forced to do. So I've done it myself. I've worked with individual business owners and people who had to change careers because of this, and organizations that are struggling with how to stay current when we've lost so many of the ways we do business.
Yeah, Laura, again, thank you for that. I think we're all experiencing similar types of, day-to-day monotony and such. And, we are joined here by our not-for-profit leaders, as well as those who have the pleasure of sitting on so many not-for-profit boards as well. And so, we hope that our conversation today is, as interactive as possible. And folks, I would encourage you to please engage us on the chat function. We want to hear from you because again, Zooms are, really unique opportunities for us to dialogue. And we want to make sure that this interaction with Laura provides you the opportunity that we hear from you and for you to engage with your colleagues who are on the Zoom here today. And so with that, we hope to give you some tools throughout our conversation today to help you all through what is a challenging time. And speaking of staying connected, Laura, Zooms, right? I know there's a lot of, anxiety out there, a lot of fear. We're using Zoom a lot. So how are you staying connected, via Zoom? And what could you impart upon our participants here today?
Sure. I mean, a lot of us are zoomed out, put on your screensaver and go do something else while you're listening to the meeting, or you're sitting back to back all day. And I've been encouraging people how do you make your Zooms more interesting? Let's put it that way. I did something yesterday morning where I used slides, and this was new to them. Not that we use slides all the time when we have a presentation, but forgetting to use them in Zoom because we're just used to the little squares. So, how do we keep people engaged is we have to be as interesting as their phone. And so, I'm always trying to help people think creatively, even on how they do the meetings. And for goodness sakes, this goes for when we were in the office too. How many times you've been to a meeting that didn't have a strong agenda and everything could have been worked out in 10 minutes instead of the 35 that it took if we had stayed on task. So I think people really appreciate when a meeting can end early because you were so organized with it, right? Including how you handle comments. And in fact, we want to have engagement today, as we said. So as we hit certain topics, go ahead and put in the chat, what's your biggest complaint about Zoom calls? And we'll see those. Go ahead, put something in the chat. What's your biggest complaint now that we've done a year of Zoom? How do you hope they could be more interesting or have less of them? Or what are your suggestions? Because we can share those with each other. I see the little things behind me. I actually went shopping for my Zoom background. You know what I mean? What does it say about your space? Knowing even how to have the camera. I have my camera at my eye level. Usually I have it a little bit higher even to make my chin look smaller. So, really put thought into it, that it's another way to engage people is what they're seeing. We forget that, oh yeah, I'm working from my bedroom, I'm working from my dining room. When you're watching the news, don't you go, hey, why are they doing that in their kitchen? Oh, look, they got apples on the counter. People are looking. So breakouts are great. Somebody said they like the breakouts. Great. Let's see. Yep. Why do we have to be on a Zoom when there's info that could have been in an email? And we'll talk about how to get people to look at your email. They run back to back with no break. Yep. Great. So, right. So, we're all pros now. So we can have a say in how these Zooms go. So speak up wherever you are. And if you're the leader running the Zooms, be aware of some of these.
Yeah, very interesting comments. And I feel the same way. Certainly the back-to-back and no breaks is something that, I feel on a day-to-day basis. And, naturally, from our perspective in the government affairs team, we're very social. and want to interact with our colleagues and speak with them. And so I agree, whoever put in the chat, that having that interaction in those breakouts is really, really critical to keep people engaged. So we'll have more definitely going on in the chat. But you mentioned something, Laura, about how we've been accustomed to doing Zoom for now about a year, and things are not going to go back to normal. And I know a lot of our organizations, whether you're a corporate, whether you're a not-for-profit association, folks are trying to operate within this framework that may never come back. And so the pivot is going to be critical. What are some concrete tips you can, talk to us about how do we pivot, about what the future holds for us? Because we can't put our budgets together. We can't interact like we're going to have, early 2019 or 18 back at us again in 2021 and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, all the workplace projections for the future is that, first of all, COVID-wise, we're not going back to normal for several months, maybe the end of the year. And then we've also discovered that, we can work remote and be pretty good at it. So there's going to be, I think we're going to see more remote moving forward as companies and organizations realize they could cut some costs with not having as much overhead in terms of real estate. But there's three things that I'm asking people to really keep an eye on. You have to keep your people engaged. And so whether you figure out, okay, let's not do Zoom every time, it could have been an email, let's have a phone call, or let's do something else. Also, we're being asked to be lean and mean. We can't plan our budgets based on the past because we don't know what's coming in. We don't know what we're going to spend. Everything is a big question mark. And finally, we have to focus on creating anew. So this is the challenge that I put forth to everyone, and it's one that I used myself in pivoting my business. What if it doesn't come back? I think we need to do that exercise for all of us in our organizations and say, okay, so let's work with the what if as an exercise. What if we don't have the same level of fundraising? What if we can never go back to a room to have a gala? What if we never see people in person again? And, not to spell doomsday, because that's not going to happen, but to cause your brain to think outside of the box. And I did that. I said, what if travel never comes back? What if I never write about another book? What if there's nothing? What do I have? And it forced me to reinvent my business. And I'm actually more excited about it than I was pre-COVID. And I think that can be the same, because I use this with other clients. I've had people tell me, the money's not there, the people don't want to buy. And I said, no, you're just looking for the wrong people. And within 3 months was able to correct that scenario. So we'll talk a little bit more later about what some other specifics you can do, especially in the social media world. But I really do want to present that as a strategy discussion in each of your organizations. What if? Instead of waiting for it to come back or to see what is, how do we operate? Let's pretend it's not coming back. How would you operate today if it wasn't coming back? It will force you to think much more creatively. And that's what we all need to do right now.
And Laura, to that point, the not-for-profit sector is not alone in this. So you work with a lot of different corporations. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you're hearing from the corporate side of the house as well? They're facing similar types of concerns?
No, certainly. I mean, they, also don't, if you're thinking of like even consumer issues, right? If people aren't shopping as much, they're shopping online, they're not coming into stores. I mean, everyone has to rethink. Poor restaurants in this state have had to rethink how to stay open. So nonprofit, for profit, it doesn't matter. But what I'm hearing is what I just said. How do we keep people engaged? How do we not lose our people, whether they be internal customers or external customers? How do we watch our nickels and dimes, and how do we recreate? And in preparing for this, I was even thinking about the commercials we see on TV right now, like the big companies, when people are going through a crisis or the country's going through a crisis, they start doing the emotional appeal commercials, right? Mm-hmm. So you're watching XYZ brand of soft drink, and they're talking about, bringing your family together with the soft drink in the front. So how can we in the nonprofit world, your message may always been more about the people, but looking at how corporate has to go to a certain heart level to get people to buy their product, you've already been at the heart level. So where do we need to go to have people still open up their pocketbooks and still want to touch you and be with you? And I think that we have to hit harder. What I mean by that is not so much tell the sob story of our financial woes as nonprofit organizations, but of course, always telling the story of who we're serving. And doing that in more impactful ways. So I looked at some of the members who are here and the list of guests today. And, we know that, for example, teen suicide is a horrible thing. And the numbers right now, from what I understand, are going up. So how do we connect for people how COVID and our current scenario is impacting our people even more than before? So how do we connect what's going on right now to each of our causes? The Girl Scouts, we can't have them together. What are we doing to have them still have the experience? I mean, one thing that I don't want to say a consumer, as a donor, I've been to a couple of nonprofit events lately where I get a package delivered to my door to participate. And that, some of I see heads bobbing, so you've had that. And what does that do though? Right? You don't have the overhead now of a room with a gala and the food and everything else. You spent some money to send me something, but it shows up at the door and it makes me keep my date with you. Because it's not just a Zoom call. It's like, oh, the stuff came and, oh, what am I going to do with this? And I get curious about how we're going to do it when we're all together on Zoom. How are they going to use these props? So I think that since we lose the camaraderie, we lose the togetherness, how do we make it tactile? How do we touch it? Even through the Zoom, by having other pieces to it. It has to be an experience. Okay, like we are such creatures now of instant gratification, of our immediacy of social media, and we have to hit all the senses. And I think that's where the creativity has come in the last year, and where it even maybe need to be more. One more example from I know we have a soup kitchen group on here. Send out a recipe for the most popular soup in the soup kitchen. Even I know soup kitchens do more than, or favorite recipe of the guests who come to the soup kitchen, and do a cooking demonstration where everyone got the recipe at home, and then we're all going to work together on the Zoom to make it together, and it's in the name of and we'll come by and pick it up and bring it to the soup kitchen. Like, make it something that everybody touches. One more example, if I'm on course here with you, my son and I volunteered at a local church food pantry last weekend, and I noticed, we're not members there, we don't even share the religion, and they had boxes for their parishioners as they went out the door of 40 items for 40 days of Lent. And I was like, great idea, let me have a box. But also because it was something I could touch, right? So each person is touching the box, touching your mission, and being a part of it. And those are just some ideas on how we have to use all the senses when we're being down to one or two with Zoom.
Laura, it's really interesting. I attend a lot of events, and they're the traditional, or used to be the very traditional networking and, having your wine and cheese and such, and an award ceremony. Now the events are similar to what you experienced or outlined. Folks are delivering things to my door. So I am now painting with colleagues, cooking with colleagues, and of course having the occasional wine tasting with colleagues, and it's been really interesting. I never thought that I would be learning or baking something or cooking a pizza or painting some sort of design with folks from around the government affairs world or elected officials. So they completely pivoted as well to try to make it as interactive as possible, so they're not just talking at us about a policy or something that they're working on, but making it much more interactive, and maybe even seeing the lack of skills that I have in painting. So we'll just put it out there. But certainly those unique opportunities have been, you know, interesting to delve into, to just, again, break up that monotony that we're all experiencing right now. And I think you hit on some of the things that the not-for-profits, you know, can do to work with their corporate partners, because again, funding is tight, budgets were blown up. And if you have any other concrete ideas or tools, or if anybody in the chat would love to share some of your ideas about how you're engaging your corporate partners or making things interesting in light of the fact you can't have your galas, please put them in the chat and be willing to share with your colleagues. But Laura, any other, you know, final thoughts on that? We'd love to hear.
Well, I also, you know, as you mentioned, corporate partners and people who can help. It's, you know, some of those these things have been great, and I don't think they're all going to go away when this is over. You know, even if we got together, maybe things would be more interactive that way, or sharing a project. But also, the project could be not just for the entertainment's sake and raising the money, but it could be a project that affects your members or your, I was going to say constituents, because I all of a sudden got the, you know, the politics in my mind, but whoever it is that you're serving, maybe those who come together as you try to raise money, you're also doing something that directly touches the end consumer of your service. You know, like the local library does. I mean, again, this is a skill set. It could be something else, but like, all right, so we know that the number one thing is in homeless shelters is that people need socks. Right? So coming together and crocheting the socks, making the socks, whatever. But concrete ideas, I would just close with, make it something that touches the mission, not just entertains and educates, but touches your mission. And I think it'll help a lot.
And so all of this requires change. And, you know, as leaders in different organizations, we all know change can be extremely difficult. So how do you suggest our leaders encourage their employees to face this change head on, to embrace it, and to change, you know, their whole way of doing things?
Well, there's, you know, one of the biggest things that people hate to do is change. So we run right up against one of the biggest, you know, human dynamics, is asking us to do something that we don't know how to do or haven't done. And the reason why we resist change is because it's uncomfortable and it's painful, and at times, and humans avoid pain and seek pleasure, right? So anytime someone resists, realize that you are making them uncomfortable. So how do you help them bridge that gap? One adage that I swear by is that discomfort equals growth. So I often try to show people that, yeah, you might be uncomfortable. It means that something's being asked of you to grow. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we're pro-growth, right, in humans and in our organizations. And also understanding that the way to manage change is to control what you can't control. Control what you can control, mm-hmm. and realize there's going to be so much out of your control, and not be stressing about that. Like, what can we control right now? Right? Our behavior, our attitude, certain actions we can take, you know, watching our budgets because the money is a question mark. So what can we control? And reframing the conversation about change from being an ugly thing to being a growth opportunity.
Great. And, you know, I do want to acknowledge that some of our participants did put some suggestions in the chat. So, for instance, the Girl Scouts are sending program kits to many of the Girl Scouts, which is great. And they're also using that experience for their donor events, which is fabulous as well. And I know that the Rodriguez Family Foundation is focusing on education via 3 paths: the community awareness, civic mindedness, and religious involvement. So definitely thank you for putting in some of your concrete ideas here in the chat, and please keep them coming. And so, you know, again, we talked a lot about donor engagement, and this is really critical. And I know one of the areas of focus that you love, Laura, is the use of, you know, social media. And we're all sitting in front of the computer, so we're probably on all of our electronic devices more now than ever, whether it be the laptop, whether it be the phone, you name it, we're connected. And so everyone's trying to vie for, you know, pay attention to me, you know, on my Facebook page, on my Instagram page, you know, my YouTube page. And, you know, how do how do organizations really set themselves apart in this social media, world where we're all trying to vie for our donors' attention, our colleagues' attention? Let us hear some of your concrete tips you have there.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before we came on, and people are seeing less likes, less comments on what they post, and we talked about the assumption that, well, people aren't paying attention. But what I've discovered by delving deeper into social media myself is that it's not that people aren't paying attention, or it's that the social media doesn't let them see what you post. So we are up against the algorithm. We're not up against people's attention. They're all on there. What is happening is that the algorithms, whether it be Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, is becoming more and more intelligent and giving people more of what they clicked on, or they can read the language. And anytime you say sign up, join now, donate here, they want you to pay for that. So you're not getting the eyes, meaning the eyes on your posts. So what does this mean? This means you have to outsmart it. And some of that comes, like, videos are getting seen a lot. If you're on Instagram, a newer thing called Reels is, it hasn't caught up with the algorithm yet. So people are going to see your Reels. They're going to see your videos. They're going to see the things that don't sell anything per se. And so you got to get smart about those. So whether it means getting a 20-something intern on your team, we cannot ignore that social media has gone beyond what most of us are capable of if we want that attention. And I've also discovered that if you can find it in your budget or shift your budget around, paying for ads works. Not doing them yourself, not boosting a post, those don't work. But having someone who really knows how to work the ads for your social media outlets pays off. So it's something to look at as a possible budget item moving forward. But you're up against the algorithm, not people's attention. So we need to outsmart that.
Laura, I think there's some other things that are key, and that's video. And I see Greg here posted to everyone, and I was actually just going in that direction as well. Getting your team more comfortable speaking in front of an audience such as this and on camera. Folks don't want to read very long, drawn out emails. They want to watch a video. So Laura, can you talk a little bit about how to use the video content versus, long, drawn out emails, and getting your staff comfortable with actually speaking in front of a camera, that old, public speaking fear?
Okay, well, you're talking my secret sauce here, because I had the benefit of being an actor before I came to the world that I'm in now. So, the stage and the camera. Now you see, I'm even talking into my camera right now. Can you see the difference when I talk into my camera versus when I talk to myself in the screen, or I'm talking to Chrissy in the screen, right? So that's a trick right there, is learning how to talk to an I, like the newscasters do. And there's no getting comfortable. There's just doing it. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. The trick to video is short and sweet. Have 3 points you want to get across and talk right into that camera like you're talking to your best friend. I've also found there's an app called Loom, Loom, where you can have a screen up, like if you need to show a chart or you need to show people something on a website, and then you come up in a little circle as the speaker, and you could do a quick Loom and say, hey guys, over here, we need to rewrite this copy. It's not working. It's not flowing over here. And you can do that in a video instead of an email that's like the third word after you say this. You know how much harder it is sometimes to communicate things that are more visual. And the thing about videos is, we're such an instant world, right? So even having a video pop up, we'll spend a minute on a video. You don't get much time. But if you can say it in a minute, you probably are more likely for people to watch it than to read your email, because they see the email and go, I'll do that later. And then they forget, or their best intentions fall away. So again, speak to the camera, not to the screen, and have 3 notes nearby, 3 little bullet points. Don't script it. and just do it. You get comfortable by doing it. And really, no one's paying that much attention to how you look. You're probably more worried about how you look than other people are. You know, they've seen you before. They're seeing you on Zooms. Just do it.
So aside from the how to do it, maybe let's talk a little bit about the what to communicate via social media, Laura. So can you touch on, what messages do folks want to hear? So we're talking into the camera right now, and I'm actually trying to pay attention, and I'm not talking to myself, but I'm talking to the camera. Can you talk a little bit about like what folks will get engaged with on social media, the actual content? So,
Sure.
Is it talking about your successes? Is it talking about who you're serving? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was talking more internally as a way to use it, but yeah, externally. You could, I'm thinking, for example, of either Facebook or Instagram, but you could feature even all the people in your office. You can say, here's Chrissy, this is what she does, and she loves dogs, and she eats pizza whenever possible. Little cute things about the people who work there. People will look at that and appreciate it. If I were to do a reels, which if you've seen like people pointing at the sky and there's little, graphics that come up, I would do statistics about my organization. So teen suicide gets my attention. So, did you know teen suicide is up by this percent? Mm-hmm. These many people are affected. It affects more girls than boys, right? So a couple of little facts, because those little tidbits get in, and you don't have to tell me a lot. You could do something about the people you've served, right? Or even like the Girl Scouts could feature a few scouts, and what do we do all year long? I'm selling the cookies. I do this, I do that. So little snippets, and personal is okay. Like people jive with that. people relate to that. So things that are relatable, quick, and impactful.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And I just want to acknowledge in the chat that the Garden State Council BSA mentioned to further engage their employees and their participants is they mailed the package to their youth participants and also had virtual campfires, which I think is really neat.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Great suggestion there. And folks, I also see here a tip that to avoid major distraction, hide yourself on your self view. So that's a great suggestion as well. And as we continue through our dialogue, and conversation with Laura here today, if you have any questions for Laura, please just put them in the chat function, and I'll be sure to try to get to them as well. And so Laura, talking a little bit about, staying connected and stuff, it is difficult, as folks said. So it's difficult, when you're, speaking and making sure that you don't have other things popping up on your screen, but also trying to keep our employees engaged, our donors engaged. Like, how do we stay so connected when all of these platforms are actually designed to keep us connected?
I think that you need to also be mindful of people's individual styles. And I think age has something to do with it too. For example, I noticed that the medical group that I belong to, I got my mother in there. She's almost 85. And I get her emails. They're not meant for me. But, we're going to be calling all of our patients who are over such and such an age, because we're not sure they're reading their email, right? So do we need to maybe get on a phone campaign for some of our people versus people who read email? Do we want to have the younger campaign of, the Instagram reels, right? So really thinking about who my audiences are and how do they best respond or need to be connected with. And now if you're talking about your teams, like you have people who require a one-on-one to work best. So you might need to have, short meetings with people once a week where other people are okay with the group. So I think that we do sometimes tend, especially now, try to reach as many people as possible and forget a little bit about individualization because we're desperate for impact. But I think that keeping in mind all the different learning styles of a team or all the different ways of communicating for your general audience is a smart strategy right now.
Laura, you talked about, trying to connect with your employees, and that is so critical. Having watched some of your TED Talks, you focus a lot of your time on that, again, that coaching aspect and how to best, make sure that you're fulfilling your passion, finding your passion, and having that motivation. I think it's been challenging sometimes with this back-to-back go, the world is changing, a lot of devastation taking place, to kind of keep that motivation going forward. And a lot of folks on this call here today are really doing such tremendous work and such important work. And so can you talk to us a little bit about how we still stay engaged as individuals moving forward? And if we kind of lost some of that gumption and drive, how do we get it back?
It's easy when you're in a storm to just be reacting to the storm, right? We want to make sure the boat doesn't sink. We don't want the sails to fall off. And we forget that, we love the exploration, or we love the adventure of where we're headed. So it is always getting back to the mission and purpose, even having that be maybe a daily focus, even if you're having that many meetings, like, what's our why? Why are we doing this? And for each individual, whenever I work with individuals and with companies, I want to know, what is that core essence? Like, what are you built to do? Are you doing what you're built to do within your organization? Whether it be you're the person who communicates through writing, or you're the person with the big ideas, or you're the person who holds the team together. There's a very old book called The Mutant Message Down Under that I think is one of the best lessons in teamwork that I've ever read. And it wasn't meant to be a business book. There's a question as to whether it was a fiction book or not. The author will say it's fiction to protect the innocent, but it was basically a story of a businesswoman who gets kidnapped in the Australian outback and starts to live with a tribe of Aborigines. And so, like, she's literally in her suit, it turns to shreds, her stockings fall off. But what she notices about being in a tribe is that each person in the tribe doesn't have a name. The name of the book is The Mutant Message Down Under. Each person in the tribe doesn't have like a biblical name or a given name. Their name is their function in the tribe. So the peacemaker, the medicine woman, the songstress, the warrior. And I think it's such a great image for how we work together. Like, in lean times or crazy times, we all have to do everything to kind of keep the boat going. But when we can remember, like, what is my special sauce? Like, what is my thing that I do here, and why are we all doing it together? It helps you. It helps you get through the hard times. And also in this story, the tribe members, they don't have a birthday on a lunar calendar. Their birthday is when they've evolved to the next function in the tribe. And I think that is so critical to not lose sight of that, even in crisis, that each of us want to keep evolving and growing. So as leaders, how do we keep tapping the best in each of the people that we work with, even if they're evolving to the next level that they want to get to? So if we can touch that weekly, at least, even in a time of crisis, I think it helps remind us all why we're doing what we do.
Absolutely. And I love Betty put in the chat function that an organization she's familiar with used an improv class to sharpen presentation skills. I think that's really a unique idea. Really gets folks out of their comfort zone. So, and Laura, you touched upon the, and as we close out, folks, we have about 5 more minutes. If you have any questions, please, for Laura, put them in the chat and I'll be sure to try to get to them before we have to conclude. About collaboration. Sometimes we resist collaboration, reaching out to other organizations who we might view as competitors, reaching out to a colleague who, we didn't work with as closely. I think that has all been, blown up, and now we have to collaborate much more because resources are limited and such. And so can you talk a little bit about how we can better collaborate amongst other organizations, how you're seeing some of maybe your clients also collaborate and think outside the box, and what some suggestions might be?
Sure. Just like when families are in crisis, all of a sudden all the fights are forgotten and we all have to work together. So of course there are fears about, if we consolidate or if we merge, what happens to my job? But if we try to think above the fray of the individual and stay on mission, like, do we need to be doing joint events with anybody? Do we need to be sharing certain resources? Are there people whose expertise could really help what we're up to? And so just trying not to be as territorial and seeing, you know, where can we both get where we want to go better by being together. Often when I'm in person, I will do an exercise that I hope you can imagine, right? So there's two people on the end of a rope, like tug of war, and they're at opposite ends of an argument. And I say to them, what is the fastest way to win this argument? And you'll have people, you know, keep on trying to pull. And I'm like, no, you're both wrong. What is the fastest way to stop the tug of war? And it was for them to drop the rope and get on the same side of the problem. So if we could all get on the same side of the problem, lack of resources right now, lack of attention, whether it be because of Zoom or whatever, or lack of our normal ways of doing things, how can we be on the same side of the problem and work together to get to a solution?
Yeah. And Lori, you have had a ton of experience with, you know, traveling the world, being on the Oprah show, which, by the way, I'm really intrigued about, would love to hear more about that. And obviously your TED Talks as well. And so as we close out in the final, you know, couple of minutes here, is there any, you know, last minute parting, you know, tools and tips that you'd love to share with our participants here today that we haven't covered yet?
Sure. I mean, I do want to remind everybody that this is temporary, but we can't stand still waiting. So I want to reiterate the what if exercise. That's really what I want to leave you with today. If you go back to your tribes and you say, what if this is it? Now, how do we need to operate? I think you'll get out of a lot of the emotion of when is this over? What's happening? A lot of the uncertainty, and just realize that working with what you have will only make you better when it all comes back, because you'll have discovered new ways of doing things. Maybe we don't need the old way back. So I'm leaving you with the what if, because it's the only way to deal with what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, you know, if folks are challenged by, you know, embracing the what if, you know, imparting some of the tools that we talked about today, whether it's, you know, getting people more comfortable, you know, with collaboration, whether it's amongst, you know, colleagues, whether it's amongst other organizations, will be critical to moving forward. And again, not losing sight of the fact that, you know, funding is so critical to mission, and, you know, trying to set yourself apart and doing so in a way that really, you know, takes the why of the organization and putting it into action, and using social media and video and other ways to directly communicate, you know, to your donor base and to, you know, those that are members of your organization will be critical moving forward. And again, trying to make sure that our employees, you know, have the boundaries they need to be productive and to really find that passion as to, you know, not what necessarily they're doing, but why they're doing the things that they do on a daily basis will be critical. So yeah, Laura, any other final comments before we conclude this morning?
Well, you did remind me of, like, you know, boundaries, you know, especially when it comes to back-to-back meetings, etc. Where can you have more control over your time? And I know that self-care is a big deal, and people go, I can't, with what happens in my house in the morning, you know, I can't meditate. I don't have 20 minutes. I can't do anything. And I ask people that to set yourself up to win, make it really small. Okay, you don't have 20 minutes to meditate. You could take 3. You could take 5. All right, you can't do a half-hour exercise video. Do the first 10 minutes. So I want to get out of the all or nothing that happens when, you know, we're in this scenario. And I actually find it interesting because we all have a little more time because we're not commuting, but look at how we went and filled it up with more meetings. So where can you push back even within your own organization? Because this is absurd, you know, especially with, if you have kids underfoot, trying to get them to focus on online to stay connected to their school. I mean, the circumstances right now are absurd. And what that pushes us to do is say, what is the bigger, better, smarter action to take today? Not how do I spend more time on Zoom? You know, let's push back. Let's not have, we don't need as many Zoom meetings. People said in the chat, one email could have been done instead of this half-hour Zoom. So let's think smarter instead of more. How do we think bigger in less time?
Absolutely. I think you summed it up really well, Laura. I just want to thank you on behalf of NJBIA and our Not-for-Profit Council for joining us here today. And I definitely want to ask you a little bit about offline about your Oprah experience and other things. So that was really, really interesting. I definitely walked away with some key exercises, both from the chat and from you, Laura, today about ways to, further engage our employees, but also, who we interact with, who is also being bombarded by the constant, meetings and emails, since we're all kind of glued to our electronic platforms. And essentially those social media outlets that you said about the algorithm and about making it interesting and short and concise, I think are all important tips that we need to walk away with here today. And again, getting back to your what if statement. So if nothing's coming back, what if? And making sure that we have that pivot effectively, and that change is going to be inevitable moving forward and at a rapid pace. So again, on behalf of NJBIA, Laura, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you to all of you. It was a pleasure, and I hope you have a great conference. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Laura.